Estonia is deepening its long-range strike portfolio with a decision to bring South Korea's K-239 Chunmu into service alongside the American-made M142 HIMARS, a move formalized in Seoul on October 23, 2025. Officials in Tallinn described the arrangement as a complementary pairing rather than a shift in allegiance, saying the goal is to expand magazine depth, diversify industrial support, and add flexibility to how the Estonian defense forces generate fires on NATO's northeastern frontier. The agreement also features a localization component worth tens of millions of euros that will route work to Estonian firms, build a sturdier sustainment base, and increase wartime resilience, an approach that mirrors Poland's dual-track model of operating both US and Korean launchers. The logic behind the combination rests on the different strengths the two systems bring to the artillery fight. HIMARS is a lighter 6x6 truck configured to carry a single pod with either 6 GMLRS rockets or 1 ATACMS missile, tied into a mature ecosystem of NATO training pipelines, digital fire control networks, and established logistical support. Extended-range GMLRS has been validated around 150 kilometers, while ATACMS is commonly quoted at roughly 300, giving Estonian units precision reach that is interoperable with Allied batteries already deployed across the region. Chunmu, by contrast, is an 8x8 launcher that mounts 2 sealed canisters and was designed from the start for payload variety and high-volume salvos. Crews can load large batches of 131mm unguided rockets for area effects out to roughly 36 km, shift to guided 239mm rounds typically rated near 80 km, or integrate the 600 mm class CTM-290 tactical missile, which South Korean industry advertises at approximately 290 km. For Estonian planners, that mix creates two complementary rhythms of fire. In one mode, HIMARS teams execute surgical tasks, precision strikes on command nodes, air defense radars, and logistics nodes, with the benefit of well-understood sustainment and transparent coordination with Allied fire units. In the other, Chunmu batteries deliver mass on demand, flooding assembly areas or suppressing air defense sites with 12 guided rockets per vehicle before displacing under camouflage. If Tallinn opts to procure CTM-290, Chunmu also becomes a national deep strike option that can sit alongside ATACMS rather than compete with it, expanding the menu of targets that Estonian gunners can hold at risk without waiting for external tasking. The geography and infrastructure of Estonia play directly into this concept. Both launchers are road mobile and rely on containerized pods, which speeds reloading and simplifies dispersal across the country's dense road network and forested terrain. That mobility, combined with a growing emphasis on distributed basing, complicates adversary counter-battery tracking. Launchers can take a shot and scoot, command elements can shift frequently, and resupply convoys can move undercover. The result is a more resilient fires enterprise that can continue operating even under persistent surveillance and electronic pressure, an operational pattern that observers have seen repeatedly across the battlefields of Ukraine and one the Baltic states have studied closely since 2022. Industry and logistics are as central to the decision as the tactical math. Localization embedded in the agreement is intended to keep more maintenance and component production in-country, reduce exposure to external bottlenecks, and accelerate turnaround times when consumption spikes. Estonia's planners have watched how high burn rates and interrupted supply chains can throttle operations, and they have drawn a clear lesson: without predictable flows of parts and munitions, capability on paper decays quickly in practice. By plugging into both US and Korean production lines, Tallinn hedges against single-source vulnerabilities, political shocks, and queue delays that might otherwise slow replenishment at a critical moment. The timing of the announcement underscores the strategic picture facing the Baltic region. Estonia has reported recent instances of Russian probing in airspace and pressure against Allied air policing missions, even as NATO has layered new forces and capabilities across the eastern flank since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. In public remarks, Estonian leaders have argued that credible deterrence requires the capacity to disrupt an opponent's buildup long before it crystallizes into a direct threat. That means holding at-risk staging areas, railheads, ammunition depots, bridges, headquarters, and air defense assets deep in the rear, not only the units sitting at the forward edge. A mixed launcher fleet opens more options for shaping operations without immediate reliance on scarce Allied munitions or long approval chains. The adoption of Chunmu also aligns with a broader European trend toward integrating Korean armaments into national inventories. Poland's Homar-K program, large-scale orders of tanks and howitzers, and emerging missile co-production projects have heightened South Korea's profile as a fast-moving supplier willing to scale output and adapt configurations for European needs. For Estonia, the choice is less about brand diversification than about speed, volume, and modern architecture that meshes with existing command and control. The two-track approach gives Tallinn a way to field additional launchers and pods quickly while preserving interoperability with NATO's standard-bearer in precision rocket artillery. There is, as always, the question of training, integration, and sustainment. Estonian forces have already begun building experience with HIMARS, having received the first 6 systems in the spring and holding discussions about expanding that fleet. Adding Chunmu imposes a short-term burden. New simulators, doctrine refinements, technical teams, and logistic schemas must be established. Yet the parallels are strong enough: wheeled platforms, containerized reloads, digitized fire control, that the transition is more of an expansion than a reinvention. Moreover, the localization provisions are designed to anchor parts of that sustainment on Estonian soil, making training pipelines and maintenance cycles less dependent on external availability and more resilient to shocks. In operational terms, commanders gain flexibility in shaping effects across different phases of a fight. Prior to contact, distributed Chunmu batteries can seat obstacles with rapid fires, disrupt road and rail movements, and force adversaries to disperse, buying time and space for NATO reinforcements. As the battle unfolds, HIMARS teams can prosecute time-sensitive targets with precision, enabling joint and combined arms maneuvers while preserving scarce munitions for the highest payoff shots. In a prolonged campaign, the dual-sourced inventory spreads risk and allows planners to balance consumption across different rocket and missile families, protecting overall tempo even if one supply line tightens. None of this eliminates hard choices. Deep strike munitions are expensive, stockpiles are finite, and production lines cannot be conjured overnight. But Estonia's decision reflects a pragmatic calculus shaped by the last several years of conflict on Europe's periphery. Capacity matters as much as capability, and diversified capacity matters most of all. By fielding 2 compatible systems with overlapping ranges and distinct strengths, Tallinn increases the number of ready tubes, enlarges the available shot set, and gains leverage in procurement and sustainment conversations with suppliers on 2 continents. The political signal is equally clear. Estonia is locking itself into the heart of NATO's fires ecosystem while also knitting ties with an Asian defense industrial base that has become increasingly relevant to European security. That combination sends a message to allies and adversaries alike. Estonia intends to be a contributor of long-range effects, not merely a recipient of them, and it is building the institutional scaffolding to sustain that role over time. In a region where time and distance compress strategic decision-making, the ability to generate reliable, repeatable, and interoperable fires could be the margin that prevents a crisis from escalating into catastrophe.